I am allowed to speak 25 minutes, and I want to start with something that I hope all of you makes very angry, which is we have no croissants at Decoded 2024. There was a very critical situation last year about the food, and it has become even worse. So this is something we need to change, and I believe if you pay attention today, we can make an impact in the future and improve the situation. So the call for today is State of the Union. And if you know State of the Union, this is typically the President of the United States addresses the nation and whatever. And of course, I like to push my ego, so I put in the title State of the Union. I want to give a big picture of the situation, and so I try to live up to the name of that thing. But you always, President of the United States can talk for hours if he wants. I can only talk for 24 minutes. So I have to make a cut somewhere, and I decided to focus on strategy for today. So there will be things missing, but I think strategy is a very important thing where we had an interesting discussion in the last year. So the first question is, why should we have strategy in Polkadot? No ecosystem needs a strategy, right? Stuff just happens, and then it turns out to be good or bad. And I think we should start thinking about this as Web3 is a promise. It's the promise of a freer internet that gives us more control, and so on and so on. You heard this talk quite a lot of times. But we have to make Web3 happen. It doesn't happen on its own. We're building Polkadot. We're building an ecosystem that is a Web3 ecosystem. But what we need to consider is it is an organism. It is a set of different functions. And when they play together we have a Web3 ecosystem, right? So we can't leave it up to chance for these critical functions to appear. We can intentionally put in effort to make these functions happen. And since we're not having croissants today, I'm angry, so I want to kill something. I want to kill a myth. And that is, oh no, we can't have a strategy in a decentralized environment. We are a bottom-up thing. It's impossible because no one is able to dictate the strategy. We don't have a CEO of the network. And what I respond to that is, yes, we can. We can have a strategy. We just have to understand how we think about strategy in a decentralized network. And it requires a little bit different mindset than we typically have. But we can take some learnings from how traditional hierarchical organizations look like. So organizations that have a CEO at the top somewhere. So the first insight that we can have is, even if you have a traditional organization, it cannot have a proper strategy. It can have a bad strategy. So this is not a unique feature of decentralized networks that they can have bad strategy. Also, traditional organizations can have bad strategy. But what we also do know is that traditional organizations can have very good strategy. We can think about Apple having an excellent strategy about how they're entering the market. So how do these traditional organizations arrive at strategy? You have the higher ups, you have the C-levels, you have the CEO, you have the board, or some of those people coming together in a close group and making up their minds about how they should pursue their business. They come up with a strategy, and then each of the C-levels or departments leads is directing it down. So they come up with a consensus about what they want to do together. They come up with a plan, and then they execute and distribute that plan towards everyone else. Now we compare this with a decentralized network, and we don't have this top-down power to direct intention and give orders to people about what strategy we want to execute. But what we do have is certain nodes in the network that reach a lot of people, that reach a lot of other nodes, that have influence. So if we can get enough influential people in this network to reach a consensus about what is a good idea and a good direction forward, then it comes very close to what we have in traditional organizations. Because these nodes with a lot of communicative abilities with a lot of influence. They are very communicative, so they are communicating with each other. They are synchronizing their models. So similarly to how blockchain computer networks synchronize their state and come to agreement about what is reality, humans can synchronize their model of the world and come to a rough common understanding of what they want to achieve. And so I think this is our basic idea. If we look at these two different models, they have a certain commonality. If we can reach a critical mass of influential actors in the network, we can come up with strategy and we can come up with direction of what we want to achieve. And to contrast this, not having a strategy is not an option. Because I don't know if you have noticed, but Web3 is highly competitive. And ecosystems are fighting for dominance. I think there will be a place for a lot of ecosystems, but at the same time, each ecosystem is fighting for how good, how valuable, how strong it can become. So we should be striving for good strategy, and we should be striving for finding ways to activate all the right functions for our ecosystem. And so this is what I have done, but not on my own. What I do is I listen to a lot of people, I listen to a lot of conversations in the ecosystem, and I take notes about everything. Every complaint, every idea, every we should do this, we should do this, but I cannot do it, someone else has to do it. I took note of this, and I curated it all into this document called the Polkadot 2.0 strategy. You can scan this QR code, there's a direct link to this collection of Notion pages. And what it contains is problems, solutions, objectives, a vision, and so on. So if you want to know who this crazy person is that tries to come up with a Polkadot strategy, this is me, I'm Tommy. Many people know me as Alice and Bob. Right now I'm running opengov.watch. I co-founded ChaosStar, but if someone from ChaosStar, if ChaosStar is name your proposal, please don't come to me to complain because I don't have the influence to change it. All right. So, assuming that strategy can work and that we as a network can come up with a strategy and have come up with a strategy, I want to use the next few minutes to talk about where Polkadot is going. So we're going to talk about a big picture, and then depending on how much time we have left, maybe dive into a few of the key areas of what is currently going on in the ecosystem. So the big picture, and this is more a sorting out. So if you've been confused about different words and ideas being thrown around, this part is for you because we're going to sort of give everything a little bit of a placement, right? So Polkadot 1.0 is delivered, and I think about 1 year ago we declared that Polkadot 1.0 is complete. Right now, there is a phase of leveraging everything that is being provided by Polkadot right now. So we call this phase Polkadot 2.0, and it is very much driven by this drive for core time and making core time in Polkadot available. And then currently in research and development, we have Polkadot Jam, which will focus much more on multi-chain composability and a range of other things that make Polkadot much more powerful, but are also yet hard for us to explain in simple words, because you know, it usually takes time until we find a simple language for things. So as a little bit of a recap, Polkadot 1.0, the idea was to create interoperability in a multi-chain world. So we have the idea of parachains. We have the Polkadot SDK substrate as a tool to build blockchains. And I think most notably, we have opengov. So opengov right now is one of the most popular applications in Polkadot. A lot of people are engaged. A lot of people get emotional. So it sounds a little bit silly to say it's a popular application, but you cannot deny it. If you look at it, a lot of people get engaged, and a lot of money is involved in directing the future of the network. OK, now Polkadot 2.0. I tried to provide translations here to these technical terms, because you get tangled up in the conversations. But Polkadot 2.0 is three things. And the idea is, let chains scale with the demand. Pay exactly as much as you need. So we have three things. Agile core time, which allows you to rent a core, either on a monthly basis or on demand. We have async backing, which allows you to make more blocks, make them a little bit bigger, make them a little bit faster. And we have elastic scaling, which allows you to rent more than one core, so multiple cores. So similar to how you have CPU cores, Polkadot 2.0 is basically about getting exactly the right amount of compute that you need so that you don't overpay or underpay. And then we have Jam. And hard to put Jam into words. I would say it's working to be the most performant, most flexible, and most composable super chain thing. So we have quite a few interesting things. PokerVM is a thing that gives us excellent performance. It's faster than EVM and WASM. We have CorePlay, which is essentially smart contracts on cores. Accords, which is immutable contracts. Right now we don't have this because chains are mutable. Allows native support for CK rollups, so for privacy chains and data compression. And something that is only developers can grasp, but transactionless steps, which essentially means your application doesn't have to conform to a single block or execute with a certain amount of time, but in theory, it can run as long as it needs to, as long as it does have enough gas. So you free developers of a lot of effort about thinking inside the box, thinking inside the block. You free them of this constraint, and so this will allow us to onboard a lot more developers because we're making it their life easier. So we're looking for happy devs. I'm trying to come up with an end game. So in what direction are all of these developments pointing? I'm not yet super happy with what I've come up with, but I think it's a good starting point. So if you hear Gavin Wood talk about Jam, a lot of what he talks about is performance, like near-native performance. So I think we're heading for best performant blockchain, or like comparable with the other top chains. And I think right now, from the specifications, only Solana is similarly specified as Jam. Affordable block space, so the right price. This is what we do right now with Polkadot 2.0. Highest interoperability. So you have to consider having multiple chains and being able to work them as a user, being able to work them as a developer is fairly new. Yes, there is Cosmos, there is Avalanche, there's Polkadot, and also Ethereum in some respect, but they're all discovering the same problems. On which chain am I sending my tokens? How do I represent it in the wallet? How quickly can I transfer tokens? And I think Polkadot is in an excellent position. We have 6-second transfer times from one chain to another. Show me another ecosystem that does this right now. I would say most flexible chain SDK is an ambition to have, but it comes with the challenge of being able to support all of this. I think this is really underappreciated fact, but the Polkadot community is really strong in Web3 values and cypherpunk values. And there are, thankfully, other blockchain ecosystems that are also strong on cypherpunk values, but I think this is something where we can be very proud about. Bitcoin started with very strong cypherpunk values, and you see it did only good for the network, right? If we and I'm thankful that Parity is also strong on this. Cypherpunk values means valuing decentralization, means valuing privacy, and all of those things, and not giving up on them because we want to make a quick gain or cut a corner. And in the end, the whole reason why we do this is because we want to have true Web3 products. And so true Web3 products for me means products that have an impact on the real world, not something that is like hyper-financialization, because we already got that solved on Wall Street, right? Sure, we can do it on blockchain because it gives us certain properties. We can look at it and so on. But Web3 products is something, an app on my phone that gives me control over, I don't know, my tweets, yeah, and doesn't get them exposed to censorship from other parties. So around this set of ideas, I think we are forming an endgame, and I think it's important to keep this endgame in mind, because all the other chains are evolving too. They're also innovating, and they're also developing sets of features that are comparable to Polkadot. So we need to keep the endgame in mind when people come to us and ask, why Polkadot? What makes Polkadot interesting? Right? So the endgame that we keep in mind, that we say it's high performant, it's affordable, those things are like hardly advertised anywhere. So to put all of this together in one phrase, the way that I like to put it best is Polkadot is the best place to build Web3. If we have the best tooling, if we have the best performing ecosystem, and we create the best place to build Web3, we can attract a lot of developers, right? But this requires some work on our end to make it really happen. So we talk a little bit about the ambition, about the end game, which is a future state. And now we need to compare this with the status quo of where are we now, and what initiatives do we need to take to get there. So I can talk about 6 key areas in about 9 minutes. So let's see. I might not read everything that is written on the slide just to save us some time. So these are the strategic key areas that different teams in the ecosystem are working on, and basically have identified problems that we need to solve to get to our desired end state. Developer experience, user experience, marketing, business development, economy, opengov. You see, these are very simple concepts, but these are essentially the enabling functions that allow us to have a Web3 ecosystem that is a true Web3 ecosystem. So, developer experience, 2 parts, parachain developers and app developers. For parachain developers, we have Rollup as a service, parachain as a service, Tansi. We are investing in education, so there's the Polkadot Blockchain Academy. I visited it, it's great. It's like 80 smart people on site. You teach to them, they interrupt you with questions, they criticize you. You really have to stand up to the discussion. But what we need to improve really is documentation, because documentation is crucial, and also is what, like the whole developer experience is what Solana invested in and what also made it really popular right now. We have the Polkadot Assurance Legion as a service. If you're building a parachain, it gives you the possibility to get your parachain audited. Parity is going into a stability initiative, so they have been pushing out features really hard, but they realized that all of those things, new features, can break old stuff. And so they're focusing much more on stability now and making sure that the stuff that is built is stable and working. And then there is the DeFi and the technical support bounty. So opengov is financing different initiatives that improve the quality of the services that we can provide as an ecosystem to developers. And we have the new test network, Passion. Now these are parachain developers, but we also have apps. And I think Apelon is making really great moves recently. So they're building this SDK for Web2 developers, essentially. This allows you, if you're a Web2 developer, you can mint NFTs and maybe connect them to, I'm not sure if this is already live, like connect it to a CRM, maybe Salesforce or something. So you could have an email onboarding flow and send someone an NFT. You can request storage, host a website. There was just a tool launched from a hackathon of Apelon, which is like WeTransfer, built on Web3. So you can send your friends big files, and they're hosted in Web3. We are getting smart contracts, and we're leaning more into smart contracts. We're getting them on system chains. And we get Yule, this Solidity dialect, being run directly on PolkaVM. And if you're into Ink, Pop Network now took the stewardship of Ink, and is basically building a blockchain for Ink smart contracts. Yeah, we're very happy about the new Universal Ledger app, which is coming. And say again? Already out, great. It's great to finally see bridges happening. I joined in 2021, and Snowbridge was always coming in 3 months. It's finally here. And I think Hyperbridge is really going to be interesting, because it's the type of bridge that we're not seeing yet out there anywhere. Just in the, I think, in the cost of how much it would cost to transfer and work with it. The picture you should have in your mind here is that Polkadot can be a hub that allows interoperability between ecosystems. So not just within the Polkadot ecosystem, within the chains that are secured by Polkadot, but also to other networks. And I think this can give us a really unique position if we really leverage that. And then this is something that sort of sounds so trivial, but cheap USD transfers, so having transfer costs below 1 cent, is something that we're getting closer and closer to. We have conversations with the fellowship, and it's something that I hope we see in the next few months. And then the last point to mention here is Plaza. So Plaza is this idea of, if you're coming new to Polkadot, you don't know where to go to. You have to read into parachains, and you have to learn all that stuff. And it really takes some time, and it really takes dedication. So we want to make it easier for people to onboard into Polkadot. Now, Plaza is this idea of, if we take Asset Hub, the chain where we have canonical assets from other ecosystems like ETH, USDT, USDC, and now we add smart contract functionality to that. And maybe we add even the best-in-class features that we have right now for Polkadot and Polkadot 2.0, and really stuff some power there and see, can we make a really interesting system chain that is the first place that you go to when you come to Polkadot? This can become a really nice onboarding tool for users and for developers. I think I'm going to have to skip some slides. I want to go into one main idea here. And so this is not, it's not about the topic of marketing, but there is this decentralization effort going on from Parity. And so Parity has laid off quite a few people, but said if you want to get something done, you can also apply to a Web3 Foundation grant. And we see quite a few businesses starting up and also from other sides coming in for this decentralized futures grant. Now what we see is a transfer of power away from Parity, which created this vacuum where there was for a few months, it was a really uneasy feeling of what's going to happen now. But what we see is teams like Distractive coming into place and taking or coordinating marketing between teams. For example, opengov.watch helping people get an understanding of how they can get funded by opengov. And so what I'm observing is we're building this network of teams that are not centrally controlled, but we are coordinating, and we are trying to build this net where we can exchange information and make sure that this network is being run by decentralized entities. I'm unhappy with business development right now in the ecosystem. It is getting better, especially with grants. I think what is interesting is that opengov is starting to become active as a participant in this business development game. So for example, there was the mythical deal with a token swap. And so basically Polkadot Dot was given to the mythical team, and they exchanged it for myth. We have the ambassador program, which is currently on-ramping, and we can be curious to see what initiatives are coming out of that. And so the general trend that we can see is that even more functions are being taken over by the network. And there is, I didn't change the wording, I call it the Cayman Foundation. It's the Polkadot Community Foundation, which is a foundation in the Cayman Islands and is a legal wrap around Polkadot. So it is obligated to follow what the DAO is dictating this foundation. And it can only execute on behalf of this foundation, which is a very interesting fact. It's a very new construction that they support in the Cayman Islands, and it allows Polkadot to own property, to own tangible and intangible assets, to sign contracts, or to direct this foundation to make contracts. So we can have legally enforceable contracts. Yeah, we're going to skip this and come to the end. Web3 is a promise, and opengov is the way to get there. It helps us negotiate, and it helps us to actually implement strategy, to actually come to decisions about what the network wants to do and achieve. So it's completely not true that we cannot have decentralized strategy. And I think the last year has shown that we have it. And if you observe and watch, you see that the network is moving forward in a common direction. Yes, it's chaotic, but we still, if you observe the patterns, there is clearly a strategy. So Polkadot is the best place to build Web3, and this is the direction we should go towards too. And we should always think, are we having everything that we need to make this happen? If you want to involve yourself in that thing and don't know exactly how, there's a few simple things. You can read these two documents that we've written. So this is the Polkadot 2.0 strategy and the Treasury report that recently came out. It gives you an insight about what is currently happening in the ecosystem. And I'm very open to feedback. If you think it's bad, you can tell me. If you think it's good, you can tell me. If you think something should be changed. Joining Twitter, Telegram, the forums, and watching AAG, this weekly show, or even joining in the call is something I can highly recommend. And I think if we network more and come together to collaborate in this way, I think it is very much possible that next year at Decoded, we can finally have croissants. Thank you very much.